This is Penny Keener, Stampin' Up! Independent Demonstrator and the original KeenerINKer. Today we're going to be making a Curvy Christmas card using the Curvy Christmas set and the Curvy dies. Colors we're going to be using is Cherry Cobbler Whisper White cardstock, as well as our classic Christmas 6x6 designer series paper. It comes with Cherry Cobbler, Shaded Spruce, and Sahara Sand in these 4 patterns for all 3 colors. Some fun papers to work with. Inks we're going to be using is Cherry Cobbler as well as Shaded Spruce. And the size of the cardstock we're using is, we're using this little strip, which is 3/4 by 5.5. Cherry Cobbler of 2.5 by 5.25. Whisper White of 2 3/4 by 5.25. And this one is 5.5 by 8 1/8. So a little bit has been trimmed off the bottom, and then this is scored at 4 1/4. So to get started, we're going to be using our Stamparatus, and the trees that we're going to be using are a little bit longer than our card, so you can see here where I've kind of stamped it out, and I know where to place my piece of cardstock in here. Because a little bit is extended on both sides, so I couldn't do it all the way in the upper corner like I normally would. So I'm going to go ahead and put my magnet to where I'm not stamping. So when I'm using the Stamparatus, I really like using the ink spots. And then if you're ever wondering to make it easier to ink, if you put a stamp case up underneath the top, or like I have my Simply Chamois in here to clean off my stamp pad. That case is just an empty case as well. And so it makes it flatter when you go to ink it versus kind of sloping down. So I have that inked up. I have it placed where I want it. I'm going to push that down, and that looks great. And here's my Simply Chamois. I've actually cut this in half to make it easier to use when I'm using my Stamparatus. All right, and then I'm going to flip that around and use my Cherry Cobbler on the Merry Christmas. And that is also placed exactly where we want it. So do you see how that's a little bit faded there? Might mean that I just didn't get a good image. It might mean that I just need to restamp my ink pad or re-ink my ink pad. So since it's on the Stamparatus, I can do it again. Voila, beautiful. It's one of the fantastic reasons of using the Stamparatus is if you don't get a perfect image the first time, you can do it again and it's lined up beautifully. So I'm going to set that to the side. Now I'm going to die cut this out. The curvy piece on here matches this very well, and you can see how it lines up. I love the stamp set and the dies together. So this is my mini stamp and cut and emboss machine, and I'm using my base plate and 2 cutting pieces, the clear plates. So I'm going to line this up on here, and it's not going to be exact, but it's going to be pretty close. Sometimes you have to shift it up and down a little. Looks like I got a little ink on my clear pad, so I'll wipe that off. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Looks like it might be down just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and push that back up again. I want to make sure before it runs through that I have it perfectly positioned. All right, so now I've started it. Crank, crank. All right. Now with this particular die, you can see how it has the little pieces in there, and you can usually just flick them out, but if you need to, you can use take your pick tool to finish poking those out, or in this case, I have a pair of my paper snips. Okay, so that looks great. Get this out of the way here. And you do want to make sure you see how there's a little paper in that. You want to clear that out before you do the die cut again. Otherwise, you may not have enough space to do that. So on this particular one, I'm going to set that aside real quick and start assembling my card. So again, I told you this was scored at 4 1/4. I want to make sure that that has a nice crease. This strip here is going to go on the inside, and I'm using my Stamp and Seal to do that. This one was fun because I was able to use a lot of the different patterns. It didn't matter if it was the cherry cobbler or the shaded spruce. It looked great. I have a little adhesive on there. Okay, so when the card is folded, you see the little bit of edge, and when it's open, you can see it along the bottom. Now, in order to attach my cherry cobbler piece, what I did is use my dimensionals, and I put 3 across the bottom and 1 in the top center. So I'm going to take these off. And I'm going to put that along the bottom. And again, this is a 1/4 inch smaller from side to side, so you have an 1/8 of an inch border. On this one, I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to do 3 dimensionals across the top. So yes, lots of dimensionals on this particular project, but it looks pretty cool. And then along the bottom, I'm going to use my Stamp and Seal, but I want to make sure that I don't cover the holes on that. And then for this particular one, remember I have 1 dimensional here, so it helps hold up the sides. So I'm going to peel that off. And I'm going to place it so again it has about an 1/8 of a 1/4, but I also want to line it up along the red on both sides. So that looks a little crooked there, so I want to take my time to make sure it's placed where I want it. All right, so I'm going to run my finger across there to make sure that it's adhered, and I have my dimensionals at the top, so it kind of lifts up the card just a little bit. I'm going to take a scrap of cherry cobbler and stamp my bow. And then with that, what I want to do is cut it out using my paper snip. So I've already done that. And then I've added 2 mini dimensionals. I love these dimensionals because they're perfect size for many things. And if you want to make your bow look a little puckered, if you take your thumbnail and just kind of push down on that center piece, it kind of makes it look like it lifts up on the sides. Peel this off on the back. And put it right above that Merry Christmas. So what a cute, simple, easy card. And with the Stamparatus, you can make lots of these pretty easily and quickly. And then you also have the area for the inside message. Just some variations. This is the exact same card, but using the cherry cobbler border at the bottom. And then here's some other variations as well. So this is again, very similar, except I added some of our gold cardstock just to add an extra layer to step it up a little. This one is again similar, but it's using the stamp to follow that line, and it took several stamps to do it as well as the dots. So I like the tree one because that was just a one thing, but again, another option. Here's using that same stamp set as well as some different pieces, and I've made a wreath there using that bow again. I love the colors on this card. And here's another variation using more of that pattern paper. And then here, instead of just doing the 2 colors of the dies, I actually stamped underneath, and it adds some more depth to that. So this is again is the Curvy Christmas card. So what is red and white, red and white, and red and white? Santa Claus rolling down the hill. Please check out my website and subscribe to my channel for quick videos on how you can be a keener inker too.